Waynecast. I'm Rob Johnson. Joining me is Chris Williams, our co-host.
How's it going?
How's the day going?
Great. Just crushing websites.
Excellent. And joining us in studio is my friend David Hayes. He is the Dean of Undergraduate Studies at Cleary University. And we first met on the Brighton Chamber podcast.
That's right.
And I thought it'd be a cool idea for you to come on Waynecast and we can talk about something that affects a couple people in America.
One or two.
Yeah, student loan debt.
Maybe four.
Yeah, now it's four.
Now it's
since we started the show. There's another one.
Right.
So I guess one question I always have is there's a narrative in the media pretty consistently that universities are very much loading up on administrators, they're loading up on overhead, and they're raising student loans to compensate for what they might call unnecessary positions.
It's like raising tuition.
Raising tuition. Right. So I know Cleary you guys operate very differently. I was super impressed when we were doing our conversation. That sounded like nothing that I heard when I was getting ready to pick a college.
Right.
So I guess from your perspective, like, what do you think is the main problem with student loans, and why have they gone up at triple the rate of inflation? Just kind of give me your opinion on the topic.
Okay. So I think when we talk about something like this, we have to differentiate between the type of school too.
Sure.
So you've got like the great big state schools. You've got predominantly online mega schools. You have something like Cleary, which is a very small nonprofit school, which operates with a very small crew. Not a lot of students, pretty small crew. So the idea that those other schools really do have I'm going to say they do more things, but there's also far more overhead and far more structure above what they need to get done, whether it's intentionally put there or not, or it's just the idea of tradition means they have to have a thing. So when we talk about different types of schools, I think we need to level that out. I've gone to big schools. I went to Michigan State. I have gone to online adult learner schools like Purdue Global. I've got a degree from there, and everything in between. And so I think that we really need to kind of parse it out, because the media is very good at making one thing a thing.
Oh, for sure. Right.
Like a university is a university is a university. A college is a college is a college. And they do vary greatly. So when you talk about like a place like Cleary, it's a nonprofit, 501c3. We don't make money. Trust me. We don't make any money. But it is what is called what we call a tuition-dependent school with a modest endowment. And so tuition dependent is the kind of the key words there. So our tuition is what makes everything run. So you look at something like, even let's say at Michigan State, where the tuition pays for a lot of things. The athletics pay for a lot of things. It also costs a lot of money. And there's also tons of different student services and student living. So it's easy to see where whether it's valid or not, that administration stacking could be a narrative. I don't know if it's true in the sense that they just do that to have more jobs, or they actually need it, because we fly pretty low to the ground. But I can see where the potential there, and a lot of this I think really gets to the idea of traditional academia, where it's pomp and circumstance, and there's things that need to happen, and you hear horror stories about tenure professors that have been there for 5,000 years and haven't thought about anything new, and
they're untouchable.
They're like Yoda old, and they haven't done a new thing in
nothing we do
in a millennium. Yes, exactly. Like, this internet is interesting. What is this thing?
Yeah.
So I mean that's all part of that traditional academia. So it's also probably an incredibly expensive lifestyle, traditional academia. So how does one afford it? Well, of course, like everything else, you put the price on your consumer.
Yeah, and I think when we shift narratives, because administration, new buildings, there's always things that you can sink money into. One aspect I think is interesting is just the amount that tuition has risen compared to what it did. So if you look at the last decade compared to the decade before that, it's usually a 3x factor when you look at like state schools. And And it's interesting because it's, if inflation is paced at, 2 to 3%, what's making tuition outpace inflation in your opinion?
In my opinion, tuition is outpacing inflation by the value put on it. So when I was in school, when I was a kid, I graduated in the late 80s from high school. All that the praises of college were sung. And that was like the only route. That's the only route to go. So it was really kind of hammered into us. And then, of course, by virtue of getting older and having families, our children, that this is the route that one should take. The idea of trade schools wasn't really brought up. The idea of apprenticeships and learning crafts really wasn't brought up. This was kind of the major push then. So I think the value of it has become ingrained in certain segments of our population. And if the value of something intrinsic to what it is made so great, then you can sometimes put any price on it and it's going to seem viable.
Yeah. And Chris, I don't know for you, but like when you and I obviously we're cousins, right? So we have a similar family dynamic. Like what was that pressure? Was there pressure for you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That was going to be the point that I brought up, was that the value of the tuition. Like in my family, it was like, once you get out of high school, you have to go to college unless you want to make $10 an hour the rest of your life. Or like my dad is a truck driver. He works 16-hour days, 5 days a week, like just constantly on the road. And, he'd call us and say, like, as an adult now, I have no idea how he does that. Like, how do you stay on the road that long?
Yeah.
But like he drove in us, you have to go to college or you're going to be like me. And he's like, he worked constantly, always like, I don't want to be like my dad was never there, but, he was there, but like he wanted to be there more than he was.
Right.
And, when, as an adult talking with him, that was one of his bigger regrets, is that we didn't get to hang out as much as, growing up. He never taught me how to, work on cars, and like, that's not really my interest now, but like,
yeah, just
so like he always, he was
Yeah.
always, you need to go to college or you'll end up like me, like working constantly for pennies. And, now where it's like, you can pay all this money to go to college, but still, if you don't have 3 years experience, then, you're still working $10 an hour.
Well, that's an interesting thought too, because that brings up a good point, because when I was the same thing, right? It was, I don't know, would you have been, because you did go to college, you did graduate, but
right.
were you the first in that regard, kind of in your inner circle there?
Yeah, just because I was the oldest. Yep.
Yeah.
And my brothers followed me. Yeah.
Yeah, because that was the same for us. It's like no one had been to college.
Right, yeah.
It was just like uncharted territory.
And no one, me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same for you.
Yeah, same for me too.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a first generation college graduate.
Nice.
Yeah. So what was that pressure? Was there a pressure, or was it kind of like the same thing Chris was saying?
It was the same thing Chris was saying. My dad was a locomotive engineer.
Nice.
And so he just drove a different large thing
Right,
all
yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
Essentially, we just exchanged large modes of transportation.
Yeah.
And I know that he secretly wanted me to work for the railroad. And that was something that I've met your friends. There's absolutely no way I want to deal with this. This is not for me. And then, but secondarily, the route out was a college education. When I grew up, and I grew up locally here, I don't know if you guys did, but the idea was you're a doctor or a lawyer or nothing. I mean, that even like whatever college education you get, it has to be in those two veins, or that's the only way you're considered a success.
Interesting.
And I think that was more from my mom, who had these absolute skewed views of life. Right. But I think that the importance placed on it when we were younger is akin to the importance placed on it now. But with the advent of social media and people being able to see different ideas and different concepts, there's an equally large anti-college push for like trade schools and apprenticeships and things. So you're kind of meeting them in the middle there. I think you were, Chris, going to getting to that point where you can still go to college and you're still making $10 an hour.
Right. Yeah, because the qualifications for some jobs now, entry-level jobs are, did you intern for 5 years while you were in college? Because, your degree isn't good enough.
Well, it's like they shifted the qualifications. So now before it was, hey, you went to school, congrats, you can come out, you can probably make somewhere in the 40s, right?
Right.
And then as time has gone on, and as more and more people have gotten degrees that are of, little to no use, or of just, don't really have any real world application. Now it's 4 years is great, but give me 3 years experience too.
Right. Well, I would argue that every degree has a real world application.
You think so?
Yeah. How one applies it, your mileage varies.
Okay.
So, I mean, I graduated from Michigan State with an English literature degree. One would think useless.
That's usually the running joke.
It is the running joke. Yeah. And my parents said it was useless. And I mean, I largely I loved being away from home.
Sure.
So I woke up one day and they told me I had to leave college. Like, I got a letter that said, you have enough credits, you have to go now. I'm like, what? Oh man, what's my degree in? It's one of those things. And but I think that the real benefit of college in general is not necessarily the degree you get. That's important. That's an important part of it. That's a qualifier at the end. But it's who you meet, how you begin to think differently, and you don't have to change like your worldview, but you're seeing the world through a different lens, and how you're able to take those concepts and move forward with a level of I'm going to say work ethic. It's not the right term, but with the desire to monetize what you're able to do.
Yeah, it's the dedication. That is a good point though, because I guess in that perspective, like there are degrees that the liberal arts degree is usually like the go-to, stand up hit.
It is the go-to stand up hit, but it's also really desirable for business people.
Oh, 100%. And that's where people have just kind of taken liberal arts and have given it a giant umbrella, and there's so much value under that umbrella.
There can be, yeah.
And again, it's a matter of how you apply it. I think that's probably the biggest point of this discussion I wanted to get into was there's really nothing anyone can do from a legislative perspective or a government perspective to fix the hierarchical issues at universities, right?
Right.
It's all going to be like, someone sets the tone. It's going to be the market changing it, right?
The market is going to change. I think the market is changing it too. And then interestingly enough, because we're seeing larger schools start to reject the idea of tenure, like I brought up before.
Yeah. We're
seeing a focus on I'm going to say the customer experience, the student experience. And I think it's slowly moving away. The big schools are very slowly moving away from this. But to be competitive as a smaller school, from our point of view, that's the added value that you have to have. That idea that you're not a number. You can come in and get whatever your parents think is a completely lame degree, but there's other people with this that have moved forward and built wonderful careers based off of the same thing. And there's no reason why everyone can't do it.
Yeah. No, and that's a great point, and that's something I wanted to touch on was what we can change is kind of educating the people that are in the transitionary phase from high school into college.
Yep.
And getting them to examine why they're going to school for the thing that they're going for.
Exactly. A really good handle on that is not something that most people at like 17 or 18 have.
No, and that's an interesting point. So, Chris, I'm interested in your thoughts. Like when we get into this, my opinion's always been, if you don't know, you shouldn't go. And I know other people have the mindset you should go do all the basics, which I don't know how every university works, but I know how the two that I went to works. Mm-hmm. There are no you have math, English, you have a couple of basics, but that first year you're going to get into some of that core curriculum for your degree that isn't transferable necessarily to something else.
Yeah. Mine was, because I went to a community college and they did have, I want to say it was a year of basics. Mm-hmm. So you get in and you get to do, because I was in your second camp, the ladder camp, which is go do your basics and really think hard about what you want to do. Maybe talk to people in that department, get the ball rolling, meet people.
Yeah.
And then after that year of basics, you can go into your core curriculum and learn how to do your thing. I wish someone would have told me that. And I wish people in high schools would, guide people into that. Because, I think it's a lot of like, oh, Timmy, you want to be a doctor? Great. Here, sign this loan. And then, so, hundreds of thousands of dollars later, you're like, I really hate other people.
Yeah. How do you be an undoctor?
Right.
Wonderful.
A doctor and staying away from people, please.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely true. So, I mean, from our perspective, the first couple of years are that starter kit.
Yeah.
There's when you go through and you get a 4-year degree, and a 2-year degree, there is a level of, it's called general education.
Sure.
That the Fed and accrediting bodies have determined makes a well-rounded human being. So there's some humanities and there's some science and there's math and there's all kinds of things in there. And this in Michigan, there's a thing called the MTA, which is the Michigan Transfer Agreement. And it probably wasn't there when you guys were in school. I never heard of it when I was there.
It was not, because we went from quarters at Baker that were non-transferable, and then when the MTA came out, they had to change all of that to make quarters transferable into semesters.
Quarters.
Yeah, right? Who thought that was a good idea?
Everyone at one point. Like literally everyone thought quarters were great. But so how it works right now is there is a block of general education that is transferable to any other MTA school, which is pretty much everyone.
That's cool.
So, I mean, there's that. I am a huge, when I get a lot of new students coming in with their parents, the 17 or 18, and I'll ask, hey, what's your major? And they'll tell me whatever thing mom told them to say, like last week, and I'll go, well, why? I mean, I am a huge fan of, obviously, you have the desire to do a thing, whether it's come to school or play baseball or whatever it is, whatever's getting you here. Get out of the house from your parents for a minute. I mean, whatever it can be. So while you're here, don't decide anything just yet. Just try some things out.
Sure.
Like I said, talk to the administration, talk to some faculty members, see if you like a thing, because you could find out you hate it all.
Yeah.
Or you could find out that guy who wanted to be a doctor really likes digital marketing all of a sudden. And there you are. That's I think the route that I happen to take. I was 14 or 15 majors, I think. We're cycling through. So I'll be an accountant this week, and then I flunk accounting. Oh, I'm not going to be an accountant this week.
Yeah.
And
why are there so many numbers?
No, I thought it was really more like TV.
Right.
Yeah.
And I landed in English with no real concept of what I wanted to do until I started to talk to people that were in the industry. And my first job out of college, I ended up writing and editing pieces of the Iowa standardized tests. You guys probably took those in grade school, a version of them.
The MEEP.
Yeah, I mean, that's similar.
Yeah.
And so that was just an out of nowhere job. It's not on any place card thing from career development, like standardized test editor. Like it's just not a thing. But the more I talked to people and the more I started to network, and largely because I thought differently.
Sure.
I mean, I was shown a different way of approaching the world that I didn't learn growing up in Howell. Yeah. So that was the biggest benefit to me in the sense. So now I had the degree to say like I know grammar. Essentially, is what that degree says. He's read a book. He knows grammar. I
speak good. Yeah.
I speak. At least write well. Yeah. So and there's the basic requisite requirements right there that without the experience. But now I was able to network and talk to people that were doing a thing. And I mean, maybe I'm the lucky one. I don't think so, because there's lots of those types of jobs out there. And it's just a matter of knowing that you have to actually do work to get the job. It's a lot of people think a college degree is like Marilyn Monroe getting discovered on a bar stool. Someone's just going to roll in one day and say, oh, wow, you got a human resources bachelor's degree? Oh, yeah. I need you to run my company. Yeah. And it's not going to work like that. It's not like getting discovered in Hollywood. There's a lot of work involved in the networking and going out there and doing it. And I think every degree is equally as valid in their industry.
That's an interesting perspective. I guess I've always been of the mindset of, and I guess it is more so on the application side, like what people are doing with it. Because like there's people that are like, yeah, I'm going to go into theater, which is, in my understanding, a couple friends that I know that have gone into that is usually more expensive, and there's less of a market for it. Doesn't mean there's not, but there's less application. So I guess it's the narrowness and how few people get through that is really off-putting to people.
It can be. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Competitive. I mean, and the theater's a thing that I was involved in a great deal. I just have a friend's daughter who she graduated from Michigan State and went into Minnesota to get a master's degree, and then finally she's, I believe, going to be getting a PhD in dramaturgy.
Wow, what is that?
It's, I don't know, like the study of theater or something. It's crazy. It's crazy high-level theater stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there is, granted, a very limited amount of roles for her.
Sure.
But when you start to get to that point, she's getting calls right now for when she graduates. Like, I need you.
That's good.
You're coming. And it's a good thing to see. So you can go from like really specialized, sort of really deep niche things, all the way down to what do I do with my business management degree?
Yeah.
And it all depends on how much you're willing to work, how far you're willing to put yourself out there, and again, how many risks you're willing to take.
Yeah. I'm gonna make a. I forget who it was. I think it was Herman Cain. He was the one that said, like, I don't have facts to back this up, but I'm gonna say this. So,
that's very Herman Cain like. So yes.
Yeah. Well, I'll leave it. So anyhow, the main thing that I think about when I think about my business owner peers is that people are putting a lot less value on the degrees in business specifically than they are on the actual experience or the desire to do it. And this is probably the case more so for the entry level to mid-level positions. Are you finding that to be the case from the university perspective or no?
Sort of. What we like to, and this is only from a Cleary experience, so I can't speak for the University of Michigan and other institutions, sure. But our goal is to have both of those at the same time.
Yeah.
So there's I like to use what's called like a scenario-based sort of education. Prior to actually getting real world experience, we're dealing in real world scenarios with real world professionals, and students are getting that experience, and then the actual practical application of that comes later on. So we require really that experience to be out there, whether it's internally working in a business unit at the university or via an internship. So that's really an important aspect that I think we tend to gravitate towards. And when that happens, you kind of have the basic degree that someone gets, get your business management degree, and they have at least a little bit of this requisite experience. And on top of that, since they've got that taste, now they have that desire as well. So that really comes across as kind of like the triple whammy I think everyone's looking for.
That's interesting.
But I know that internships and practical experiences aren't always required. I graduated without an internship way back in the 90s.
Yeah. I know we don't have a ton of time left, but I want to talk about a couple things really briefly in smaller segments if we could. Mm-hmm. So Chris, I'll start with you. So when you have, let's say you have right now as you sit, if you have like a 16 or 17-year-old kid, maybe you're mentoring him, maybe you just know him really well, and he says, all right, here's my game plan. Here's what I want to do. Like, what advice are you giving him on transitioning to college, or what's that conversation look like?
Good question. So I guess like if it depends on what they want to do, right? So like if they want to go, well, I guess it depends on also how they do in high school, I think too. Like if school's just not their thing, and then they're going to struggle all through college and just rack up that debt. And then, it might not get them anywhere because they're just so burnt out by the end of it that they're just like, I'm going to go work at, the grocery store and then just deal with it. But if they want to go to college, then, I'll do whatever it takes to get them to there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that when the younger people that I've spoken with, and I got nieces and nephews that are in that transitionary phase right now, and a lot of it's been centered around like, you probably don't know what you want to do. Right. You probably don't know, at 16, it'd be very rare for someone to map that out. Cause like when I was 16, I was like, I'm going to be a doctor. And then I was going to be an accountant. And then,
that worked out.
Yeah. Hell yeah. No, now I had to hire an accountant. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So it's very rare that you get into this position where you're like, I'm 16 and I got it all figured out.
Right. I don't think that exists.
Right.
I don't think that happens at all. You got some. You think you've got something.
Well, Doogie Howser, right? He did it.
Well, he was also make believe.
Oh, he was.
Sort of. Yeah. I'm sure there was a live Doogie Howser somewhere. In Tanzania, at 14, operating on his villagers.
Taking out the appendix. No anesthesia.
I saved Patel.
It's very rare for someone to have that. And the biggest thing that I found is like, it's not. I guess my big overarching advice has always been like, there's not one path.
No.
Like for me, when we have people that are like the people that we hire here, most of the people that work here do not have degrees in what they do,
Right.
but they have passion that is unlike what I've ever seen in someone that does have that degree.
Right.
And that's a really interesting perspective. That's unique to us. I don't think that is the open and shut case of like this is how it always has to be.
It's common though.
Yeah.
It's common. So what we've started to do is put together it's generally for more adult students or a little bit older, and it's called a PLA. It's a prior learning assessment. And what that does is it allows us to quantify like passion and experience and life experience as college credits. And so we have a lot of students that come through that are, I call them the bucket listers, you know, the ones that they're pretty well off in their careers right now. They're doing really well, but they just want to finish this thing. And so being able to quantify that life experience because they have the proper competencies, they've done the things in real life that we're just showing the scenarios of in class to the 18, 19-year-olds.
Yeah.
And so they're able to articulate this in this argument for our accreditors and to make sure that it's all, you know, cross T's and dots I's. And that, I think, you know, there's a wave of that going in higher ed, and not in any of the bigger places, but the smaller places that are trying to be more competitive. And I think that's a, you know, wonderful thing. We just started an initiative with the Detroit Police Department. And so we have a large group of officers that are later on in their careers and finishing bachelor's degrees based off of this level of training and life experience that we can equate to college credit. So
That's cool.
You know, I think that whichever route someone takes, whether it's, you know, 17 or 18 going in for the first time trying to figure something out, or, you know, those lucky kids that walked through Europe for 2 years, you know, backpacking and then decided to go to college or whatever, all the way to, you know, your 45-year-old police captain who has decided to, well, about time I finish this up.
Yeah.
And I think that there's lots of avenues and lots of routes. It doesn't really address the idea of the cost of it because that's, you know, it's still exorbitant. But I do think, you know, in a nutshell, that whatever someone's reason, they'll find something that they enjoy. And they'll also, if they do the work and they're dedicated to it, they'll find a way to apply it and monetize it.
Yeah. So David, I guess same question to you. And I know you get to do this kind of for your job, right?
Right.
You got those kids coming every day saying, you know, what do I do? Where am I at? What's your most common advice for those kids?
My most common advice is not to choose.
Okay.
Don't choose yet. You don't know what you like. You have no clue of this is a thing you'll enjoy because you haven't done anything yet. Most of you haven't even had a job. You know, you haven't filled out a W-2.
Good point.
That's a real good point.
So, you know, how are you going to know you like human resources? You may not even like people. Maybe you are the one that wants to be an accountant.
Right.
So that's generally my first advice. Don't choose. And I mean, just to go back to the police, you know, I deal a lot in the other side of my life, in the forensic psychology side with police psychology. And there are a lot of 45 and 50-year-old police officers that regret the decision they made at 18. You know, that fun, exciting career at 18 is no longer fun and exciting at 45
Right.
and 50.
Sure.
And I want everyone to try something before you buy something. Okay. Anyone can do a year of college. I mean, if it's a money thing, go to community college where things are much more reasonable, and you get to experience an array of things. You could try pottery and then, you know, CAD drafting, and whatever you want to try it's up for grabs. If your motivation is you're there to play a sport, play your sport and dabble. Right. Try as much as you can. Get as much experience in whatever you can, and try it out. But it comes down to, you know, make it a real life experience, not one you saw on TV or your parents told you or your counselor said would be a good idea.
Yeah. Do you think that universities are going in the way of more experiential than just, because we talked about this a bit on the Chamber podcast, which was, I prefer, because like even with marketing people, by the time it hits the textbooks, it's probably going to be close to being outdated. Concepts are always going to be forever, ROI, all that.
Right.
But when people talk about specific platforms, one thing that caught my attention about you guys is you guys try to bring in people that are experienced professionals and actually doing it to educate people. Do you think that's going to be the biggest trend that we see in college moving forward? Is that more experiential education?
I both hope and hope not.
Okay.
If it's not, then we're the ones doing it, and it's very attractive. But as an industry as a whole, yeah, I really hope that's the trend, because like you said, look at a tech career. By the time it hits some curriculum, it's out of date.
Right.
Yeah, and that's kind of the advantage that you guys have, is because if you look at ships, this is going to be a long analogy, but probably hopefully a good one. If you have a really big ship, it's really difficult to turn really quickly, and you guys being a little more nimble, smaller ship, you guys can turn quick, and I think that's why it's so exciting that you guys can just make changes. I talk a lot about the concept of a day one and a day two company. Day one companies can just run and gun and change. Amazon as a day one company. They're huge,
right?
But they were built to change quickly. Day two companies, I will say Microsoft would be a day two company where they can't make changes as nimbly as Amazon can. So you guys, in my mind, sound a lot like a day one college where you guys can just make changes on the gun. Within
reason, yeah. There's accreditation things and boards, but I mean, it's. I think not in so much as making changes quickly, we're able to see gaps quicker.
You're able to recognize trends and do something about it.
Yeah,
that's what I like. Is that here's a real problem that we have, and then what's the solution actually going to be, and you can execute that. Where someone like MSU. Not picking on MSU.
It's like the day after the Edmund Fitzgerald anniversary too. So this is like, wow, holy man,
how timely!
You are present,
right? Not to pick on MSU. It's the school I root for. So, but I'm just saying, when you have more infrastructure and when you're bigger, it's much harder to make those changes if they're not built into your DNA as a company or school from the beginning.
And if a lot of your funding comes from those traditions and rigor and buildings and structure too.
That's a great point.
So
as well.
they're all the research grants and everything as well. So you can't turn even the captain's more reluctant to turn the moneymaker when it's moving in that direction too.
Oh, for sure, and because then it's a risk, right? Then you're sacrificing something else. So that's cool. I know we gotta run. I want to be respectful of the time that we have. So I don't think we solved it.
No, came close.
Damn close.
Came close. Yeah. I mean, the Edmund Fitzgerald. Alone.
That was good.
It's power podcasting right there.
Post number one on YouTube for sure.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Should I sing it on the way out?
Yeah.
No, it's not going
to go.
Look out, Joe. All right, cool. Well, David, as always, man, I appreciate your time.
Oh, my pleasure.
I appreciate you stopping by. Chris, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks.
And everyone, that'll wrap up this week's episode of Waynecast. Appreciate y'all listening. We'll catch you on the next one. Take care.